Namaste and good morning to all of you. Let's start our Sunday Gita class with some mantras where we are thanking Lord Krishna, Rishi Vyasa, who has given us this beautiful scripture, Bhagavad Gita. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Grathitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritvarshine Bhagavati Mashtadashadhyayane Am Tvam Anusandhame Bhagavad Gite Bhavatveshine Namo Astu Te Vyas Vishal Buddhe Ful Arvind Ayat Patra Netar Yena Tavya Bharat Tail Purnaha Prajwalito Gyan Maya Pardeepaha परपान्न पारे जाताये तोत्र वेत्र एक पाने ज्ञान उद्राये कृष्णाय गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोगदा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगत गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ जला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्य ग्राहवती कृपेन वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सो तीर्ना खलु पांडवई रन नदी के वर्तका केशवा पाराशरे वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थ गंधोटकम नानाख्यानक केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपदय रह पे पिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकम करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिम यत्कृपातमहं वंदे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुताः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यस्तवे वेदै सांगपद क्रमोपनिषदै गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यान अवस्थे तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. Chapter 7, Gyan Vigyan Yog. We are towards the end of this chapter. Last week we ended the class with verse number 24, where Lord Krishna is saying, the foolish think of me, the unmanifest, as having come to manifestation, not knowing my higher, immutable and fearless nature. Okay, so who are the foolish? The people who don't understand. God is everywhere, all the time. God can take the form also. God can be formless also. So he used a very strong word over here, abudhya. That means less intelligent. Okay. In other words, the foolish. Because always people argue, no, God is in this form, not in that form, or God is formless. People just assert their opinions about God. So we got to just read clearly what God is telling us over here. And what really causes this ignorance? He is explaining in the following verse. So in other words, by knowing this, we should try to get rid of our own ignorance. He says, na aham prakasha sarvasya yog maya samavrita moodaha ayam na abhijanati lokaha mam ajam avyam. This is verse number 25. Na means not, aham, I, prakasha, manifest, sarvasya, to everyone, to all. Yog maya samavrita, veiled by the yoga maya, the divine maya. Samavrita means veiled by. Moodaha, deluded. Ayam means this. Na means not. Abhijanati, knows. Lokaha, the people, this world. Mam, me. Ajam, unborn. Avyam, imperishable. He says, I'm not manifest to all in my real nature, veiled by Yoga Maya, the divine Maya. This deluded world does not know me. the unborn, the imperishable. See, we all know this term Maya. Maya is the external energy of God. Maya. Maya, Rajsik, Tamsik, Satvik, those are the guns of the Maya, which is called illusion also. Then what is this Yoga Maya? How is this Yoga Maya different than the Maya? Yoga Maya is the personal power of God. With the help of the Yoga Maya, God governs all these worlds. He even blesses his devotees with this Yoga Maya. If you want to just think about it, it's like a Yoga Maya. Above Yoga Maya is God, then the Yoga Maya, then below this is the Atmas, and underneath the Atmas, the Maya. So Yoga Maya performs two functions. It hides God from the souls who are not qualified yet. And it also bestows grace upon surrendered souls so that we all may know him. Okay, so just remember this, that Yoga Maya is a personal power, divine energy of God. Yoga Maya. So Yoga Maya keeps his divinity obscured from us. Until when? Until we become eligible for his divine vision. So the Yoga Maya power is both formless and also manifests in the personal form. When Lord Krishna came, Radha was the Yoga Maya. Sita is considered the Yoga Maya. Durga is considered the Yoga Maya. Parvati, there's so many different manifestations of Yoga Maya. Those are all divine forms of the Yoga Maya energy. And in the Vedic culture, they are revered as the mother of the universe. All these Yoga Mayas, when they manifest, they radiate motherly qualities or motherly tendencies like forgiveness, compassion, grace, causeless love. That all comes from Yoga Maya, manifestation of the Yoga Maya. That's why this very beautiful way, some of the Christian devotees, they say, Radhe Radhe, Krishna Milade. Say compassion. Compassion of this motherly compassion in Yoga Maya. And this is the core of everything. And why it's not known by most of the people? Why we cannot experience it? Or in other words, what really stands between me and the God? Why do we behave as we do, as the limited ego centers, not able to comprehend it all? And that is because of the Maya. Because of the Maya, we really don't understand all this. Maya is the most difficult theme of all when we are at a very elementary level. This Maya hides it all. But when we do the sadhana, we really can understand objectively this science of life. The minute we try to understand God and other powers, they are there to help us. we can see that the principle of Maya is functioning inside us when we are ignorant about something. That is called avidya. And when we start to remove this avidya with the help of the vidya, we can understand it a little bit better. Because this avidya is the one which is veiling the truth from us. And that's why it's called avarna. So we got to remove this avarna, this veiling, this covering, and get to know this reality. So the Maya really keeps on playing with this triple temperaments. Tamsikta, Rajsikta, Satvikta. And that's why this self-control is needed. That's why tapasya is needed. That's why sadhana is needed. We need to listen to or read the scriptures, reflect upon it, meditate upon it, get rid of the agitations of our mind, control our senses. And when the veiling is completely pulled down, we discover this, because this is the truth. Me, the unborn, is immutable. Whether we want to call this me, the soul, or whether we want to see God as a Brahma outside. Okay, so that's why Lord Krishna says that my real nature is veiled by the divine Maya. And most of us stay ignorant about this. Then he says in the verse number 26, Ved aham samtitani vartmanani cha arjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedna kaschana. Ved, no, aham, I, samtitani, the past, vartmanani, the present, cha means and, arjuna, bhavishyani, the future, cha means and, bhutani, the living beings, bhut prani, mam me, tu means verily, ved knows, na means not, question anyone. He says, I know, O Arjun, the beings of the past and the present and the future, but no one knows me. So this is the idea that God is omniscient, which is very common to all the religions of the world. Vedas declare this again and again. The illuminating principle in this whole universe is God. Even our mind and the intellect, they become enlivened only when this consciousness is there, the self is there. It's almost like a fan cannot work without the electricity. The bulb cannot illumine without the light, that electricity. The same way, all of this. And God says, I know it all. I know the beings of the past, the present, as well as the future. That's why we use the term Trikaldarshi. God is Trikaldarshi. Three means three times. Past, present, and future. Omniscient. We try to analyze God with the help of our intellect. It's not possible. Intellect is a part of the Prakriti. Prakriti is a finite. Finite cannot understand the infinite. In Ramayana, Tulsidas ji said, Ram atarkeha buddhi manvani. Mat hamara asasubhai sayani. He says God cannot be analyzed by arguments, tark, or reached by words, mind, and intellect. Then how do we know God? By surrendering, by having faith. So Lord Krishna is declaring here that He knows everything. God knows everything. At all times, at all places, he is known by none at any place or at any time. But me, none knows. So over here, Shri Krishna is pictured by Rishi Vyasa as the divine embodiment of the truth and incarnation of this Brahman. That's why he's saying that I know it all. Nobody knows me. The knower of everything in all the three periods of time. How do we know him? We got to learn how to pull these layers of our personality. Then we will experience him too. That doesn't mean that we cannot experience him. That doesn't mean we cannot feel him. God says you can know me also, but you got to pull down all these layers, these upadhis. And these upadhis are keeping us limited. Upadhi as a body, upadhi as a mind, upadhi as an intellect. So we got to rise above it, go beyond these upadhis. Only then we can know that. And then we are one with God, actually. We can't even say that we know God. There is no difference between he and I. And there's a oneness. It's like a complete union. That little I has gone. There's no ahankar. So that's why it's a common saying that there's only one personality who knows God. And that is God himself. You become God when you know God. When somebody utters that Aham Brahmasmi, that means there's no difference between me and God. There are no two, only one. And what really veils this essential nature from our realization of the same? Again, he's telling us, he has told this earlier also, but again in the verse number 27, he says that the biggest dualities, they keep us away from him. The dualities. Icha, dvesh, samuthen, dvand, mohen, bharat, sarvabhutane, sammoham, sarge, yanti, param tap. Icha. Icha is the desire. Dvesh is aversion. Samuthen, arisen. So it's like a arisen from desire and aversion. Desire is something you want. Aversion is something you want to stay away from. Icha dvesha. Dvand mohen. By the delusion of the pairs of opposites. Pairs of opposite, heat and cold. Honor and dishonor. Health and sickness. Happiness and sorrow. Those are all pairs of opposites. So dvand mohen. Sarvabhutani, all beings. Sammoham, to delusion. Sarge, at birth. Yanti, enter. Paramatap, that is for Arjuna, the scorcher of the enemies. Paramatap. Lord Krishna keeps reminding Arjuna that how brave you are, how strong you are. Don't feel dejected. He says, by the delusion of the pairs of opposites arising from desire and aversion, O Bharat, all beings are subject to delusion at birth. O Paramtap. Under the effect of the material consciousness, we constantly desire something and we detest something else. And the biggest dualities are what? Birth and death. Those are the biggest dualities. We rejoice at the time of the birth and we mourn at the time of death. Even though those are the two sides of the same coin. So this is a pretty highly scientific, extremely subtle philosophical truth he is suggesting to us in this verse. The instinct of self-preservation, that is a most powerful urge in all of us. We want to live, even though sometimes we are miserable in this body, but still we want to live. We want to keep on living. We don't want to say bye to a suffering person or a dying person. It's a very strong instinct we have. This is called the instinct of preservation. Rishi Patanjali called this instinct abhinivesh. Abhinivesh. It started with the avidya, but ultimately he says it's abhinivesh. Fear of death or clinging to this life. As long as you don't know what's beyond, you're clinging to what is in front of you. When the impulse of desire, icha, it's flowing towards the objects of attachment. And there is something which comes in between. Anger comes also. He talked about that in the previous chapters. But over here, he is talking about just icha and the dvesh. Icha and dvesh, these are like a tug of war between the two forces, desire and aversion. And helplessly, we feel the tension in our mind. We want good, we don't want bad. Constantly, there's a tug of war. And the root cause, the mool karan of all this is ignorance. Ignorance, avidya. If you are on this path for some time and you want to see, have I progressed? And this test should be just for ourselves only, not to test others. Remember the sign of spiritual progress or wisdom, that have we risen above attraction and aversion or not? Material attraction and aversion from any kind of a pain. That is a spiritual wisdom. That means there's a progress. Otherwise, what happens? This mind is constantly preoccupied with the pursuits after the things of its desires, lot of efforts running to fulfill the desires, and running away from anything we don't like to have. Constantly, mind and the intellect, they're working for that only, and we feel exhausted. End of the day, or even end of the life, we feel exhausted. What did we gain? So that's why Lord Krishna says the only way we can come to rediscover our equanimity, tranquility as the eternal self is to control and win over the agitations of the mind. Otherwise, mind just keep on tossing between the icha and the dvesha, between the birth and the death, or any other kind of a duality, the dvanda. If you look at all the spiritual practices in all the religions of the world, or the techniques which are given by the teachers or the gurus, they are either emotional or intellectual or physical, so that we can aim towards the tranquility. Whether somebody says that sit down and meditate for a few hours or a few minutes, or pray, or go somewhere at a solitary place, or read a book, all of that is to bring some tranquility in the mind. Perfect mental illumination. And whenever we feel that, we know we are very close to knowing who we are. But then Lord Krishna in this verse says, all beings fall into this delusion at their very birth. He is just only giving us a philosophical truth, not a pessimistic submission. Why at birth? Because when we are born, first of all, most of us are born because we had certain unfulfilled desires. That's why we took birth. We want to fulfill those desires, unfulfilled desires, but not knowing, we keep on adding more and more desires to it. So we are born because of the desires and not being knowledgeable about it, then we just add more desires to that. To get out of this delusion and gain the right knowledge is the sacred goal of life. And that's why Lord Krishna keeps on telling us, reduce the desires. Reduce these desires. Likes and dislikes, they are like inseparable aspects of this Maya. Likes and dislikes. Attraction and aversion. And what are the qualifications we need to rise above this? The following verse is given. Verse number 28. Yesham tu antgatam papam jana naam punye karam naam te dvand moh nirmuktaha bhajante mam dridvrata. Yesham, of whom, tu means but, antgatam, at an end, like a completely destroyed, antgatam, papam, sin, jana naam, of men, punya karam naam, the virtuous deeds, the pious activities. Te means they, dvand moha nirmuktaha, freed from the delusion of the pairs of opposites. Dvand is the pair, nirmukta, freed. Bhajante, worship, mam means me, dridvrata, with steadfastness, with determination, drid, strong will. But those people of virtuous deeds whose sins have come to an end, who are freed from the delusion of the pairs of opposites and are steadfast in vows, worship me. So in other words, such souls who have freed their minds from the dualities of desire and aversion, desire and hatred, only then we can worship God with unshakable determination. Worship really means loving God. Loving God. Otherwise, it's like from a Sakam Bhakti, we got to rise to that Nishkam Bhakti. We want to love God more than the toys we will get from God. You remember earlier he mentioned 4 kinds of Bhagat. Arth, Jigyasu, Artha Arthi, then Gyani. He said Gyani is very dear to me because I am dear to Gyani. He loves me, I love him back. So first he talks about that sins got to be destroyed. Pap got to be destroyed. And we all know what paps are. All kind of wrong tendencies. Hurting somebody, telling a lie, getting angry, All those sins are actually the obstacles between us and that ultimate goal. Those are all sins. And only we can remove those. Nobody else can do it for us. But watch at the physical level, at the verbal level, and at the thought level also. Otherwise, we keep on putting the imprints as the vasanas on our chitta. So we got to learn how to break that vasana, thought, action chain. Okay, because from the vasana is very subtle. From the vasana, it becomes a thought. From a thought, it becomes action. And when we act a certain way, we are putting more vasanas and more thoughts and more actions. Just we got to learn how to break this chain by doing the good deeds. See, there's a punya and papa. Punya is called merit. And punya is in contrast to the papa. That's why ever since we were little, we were told to do the punya karam. Keep on doing the punya karam, the good actions, where you help somebody. You become non-greedy. You become an asset wherever you live. Keep on helping. So in the long run, the pattern of the pap, it just keeps on wiped away when we do more and more punya. So that's how we prepare our mind and intellect and erase all the negativities. But then he also says, keep doing the virtuous deeds. It's like a keep on doing the positive things, and negative will be removed. So it's almost like if there's a jar full of dirt, keep on pouring the clean water in it. The dirty water will flow out. So keep on doing the virtuous deeds. The impressions of the paps will move away. But then we don't want to stop there. He says, free yourself from the pairs of opposite also. Pairs of opposite, they belong to only Maya. That's how we come to that level where we can feel the power of God, that Yoga Maya. Pairs of opposite. And then he says, steadfast in vows. You have made a vow that I am going to live a clean life, a good life, where I want to help others, a yogic way of living, steadfast, full determination. That kind of a, in Sanskrit, it's called a sankalapa. To make that kind of a sankalapa. I'll get up at the right time, sleep at the right time. In between, my whole life will be full of discipline. That is a steadfast in vows. And then he says, love me. This kind of a person, of course, will love God. Then in the next verse, 29, last two verses are almost a start of the next chapter. And next chapter is Akshar Brahm Yoga. So listen to this. Jara maran mokshaye mam ashrite yatantiye te brahm tat vidu kritsnam adhyatma karam cha akhilam. Jara maran mokshaye. Jara is the old age, maran is the death. Moksha, liberation. So for liberation from old age and death. Mam means me. Ashrite, take shelter in. Having taken refuge in. Yatanti, strive. Ye means who. Te means they. Brahm. Tat means that. Vidu, no. Kritasanam, everything. Like a whole. Adhyatmam, knowledge of the self. Karam is action. Cha means and. Akhilam, entire or whole. Those who strive for liberation from old age and death. As we all know, old age and death, painful. Painful. Those who strive for liberation from old age and death, taking refuge in me, they realize in full that Brahma, the whole knowledge of the self and all action. So physically living a long life or continuity of the existence in the world is not the goal. Because we all know nobody can live here forever. Once we are born, we'll go through the stages, the growth, the decay, the old age, and the death. So birth, growth, disease, decay, and death, those are the natural modifications. They will come in everybody's life. Once we are manifested, we'll go through these stages. And these are the experiences of the changes. And there's an agonizing pain in there. Sure, there's a joy here and there, but mainly it's always worrying about what next, what will happen. But a true meditator, a devotee, comes to realize his identity with the self. I am the Atma. I am not the body. I'm not the mind. I'm not the intellect. I am the Atma, who is part of the Paramatma. This little hand gesture tells us that. And we are all familiar with this hand gesture. The self is the eternal truth. And this self or the soul is the substratum for the whole universe, which we call the Brahma. So to realize the self is to become the Brahma, because self in the individual is the one self everywhere. So this non-duality of the truth is implied here in this verse. That's why I told you next chapter, the name is Akshar Brahma. He will tell us more and more about Brahma. Brahma which never gets destroyed. There's no change in that Brahma. Indestructible, unchangeable, eternal. Those who meditate upon me come to know the Brahma. That's what he's telling us in this verse. The knowledge of the self, but then it's not the knowledge alone. We are in a karma yoni, and that's why he says karma also, all action. We will recognize a yogi from the actions of a yogi. When a yogi is in a body, yogi will do all the duties properly. Lord Krishna came in a body. What did he do with that body? He served others with that body. He helped others. What did Lord Ram do? Helped others. Karam. They came in a karam yoni. And that's what Lord Krishna is telling us over here too. After realizing, recognizing who you are, then help others wherever you are. Live for others. Those were the last words of my own Gurudev Ji. Live for others. And we can live for others only in our actions. Wherever we are, we got to help others. Because normally it's a general misconception that the religious person must leave the world and live in a strange realm of his own. But not according to the yogic philosophy, not according to Lord Krishna. They are saying that come back. Maybe sometimes you need to go away to do some tapasya, but then come back, help others. Help others. Because this misconception, we got to remove, we got to throw it out from our mind. So on one hand, we got to realize the all-pervading self. We got to learn That to comprehend what this adhyatam is. So that's why in these terms over here, Kritasanam adhyatmam karam cha akhilam. Completely, we got to become proficient. After knowing, we got to also become proficient in all our activities. That's why it said, Yoga karmasu kaushlam. A yogi is the one who will do every action skillfully. It's also very commonly known among in the communities, ashram communities. If nobody else can do it, give it to a yogi. A yogi will do it. He alone can serve the world, who has a full and complete knowledge of the psychology and the philosophy of life. And a person who has a perfect control over the senses also, and as well as the mind also. Because most of us dissipate our energy and waste our time because we just don't have these horses of ours tamed, which are called senses. Eyes just take us wherever they want to take us. We don't have any control. We don't have a control over that tongue of ours. Morning till night, we just want to eat and eat whatever comes in front of us, or keep thinking about what we're going to eat next. We have to learn how to tame these horses. But Lord Krishna is telling us, a man of harmonious perfection has the fittest instrument to live the integrated personality, in the integrated personality, smartly, efficiently in all the activities. This is what he's telling us. And then continuation of this in the next verse, Lord Krishna is declaring like how a man of wisdom, a man who knows all. Sadhi bhutadhi devam mam sa adhi yagyam cha ye vidu paryan kale api cha mam te vidu yukta chet saha. This is the last verse of this chapter. Sa adhi bhut adhi devam. So with the adhi bhut and with the adhi dev, these are like a technical terms, and we'll see that in the next chapter. He'll try to explain it to us for that. So with the sa means with the adhibhut and with the adhidev. Ma means me. Sa adhi yagyam, with the adhi yagya. Cha means and, ye means who, vidu means no. Paryan kale, at the time of death. Api means even, cha means and, mam me, te means they, vidu no, yukta chet saha, steadfast in mind. That means with the full consciousness of God. Those who know me with the adhibhut, and let me tell you, this adhibhut means pertaining to the elements. That means the world of objects. Bhut, elements. Okay, adhibhut. Adhidev, that means pertaining to, in our body, it's the sense organs or the power of the sense organs, and outside also the devatas. The power behind all these elements. So the forces behind the elements, that is adhidev. And the adhi yagya, pertaining to the yagya, the sacrifice. Even at the time of death, steadfast in me knows me. So that means a person who has done all the sadhana, has become a realized person or an enlightened person, is in full consciousness of God even at the time of death. So at the time of the death also, this person knows God is everywhere, does not get deviated from his ultimate goal. So not only this yogi lives a perfect life, yogi knows how to die perfectly too, how to let go of this body also at ease. So that's why he has been telling us to remember God all the time. Because to remember God at the time of death is definitely exceedingly difficult. It is difficult. Scriptures talk about it that death is an extremely painful experience. They write in the scriptures that it can be like 2,000 scorpions biting the person at the same time. It is beyond the capacity of an ordinary mind and the intellect to tolerate that kind of a pain. So that's why the time to do the sadhana is now. Even before the death comes, the mind and the intellect should be in our control. We should know who we are. So sadhana, we don't want to wait. And how can we do this? Remember God all the time. Only then we will remember God at the time of death also. And this is possible, as he has been telling us in the last few verses. This is possible only if we have risen beyond the pleasure and pain of the body. If we have risen above the dualities, those who know him as the governing principle of Adi Bhut, Adi Dev, and Adi Yagya, because God is the governing principle of all these, will be in full consciousness of God, even at the time of death. God created this universe, God created this body, God created the gods also, the devatas. All our actions are for God. That's a yajna. So when we live a life like that, because this is the true knowledge. So this true knowledge leads to complete devotion. Because when we say God, God, and God, only God everywhere, the mind becomes so fully attached to God. So it's not just a theoretical knowledge. See, theoretical knowledge can be imparted, but wisdom cannot be imparted. This wisdom we got to cultivate. This knowledge we got to convert into wisdom with the help of the sadhana. So that's why no book, no temple, no place can give us the wisdom. They can give us the knowledge. Wisdom we have to cultivate. Wisdom is the glow that knowledge imparts to the individual. The fulfillment of knowledge in an individual is possible only when he becomes a man of wisdom. And that comes from sadhana. That's the reason this daily practice, daily sadhana is extremely important. Philosophical portion of all religions provide this knowledge. They say the same thing. There's definitely instructional sections in every religion. Religions, they give us the techniques also. But ultimately, the assimilation of this knowledge and digestion of this knowledge, we need to do it. It's almost like somebody can cook for us. They can put a food in front of us. They can put a food in our mouth also. But ultimately, we have to chew it, or we have to digest it and assimilate it. And wisdom comes after assimilation. That's why every religion seeks to create the men of wisdom. Only then there's a fulfillment of life. Only then we will bless ourselves and bless the generations to come. So this is the last verse of this chapter 7. Next week we will start with the chapter 8. Akshar Brahm Yoga. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om.
Hershji, would you like me to recite the 10 verses and be done with this chapter?